The stars had always fascinated Daniel, even as a boy. He would stare into the night sky from his small backyard in the quiet town of imagining worlds beyond Earth, civilizations beyond imagination. He never thought, though, that the universe would call him in a way that would change his life forever. Years ago, when humanity barely understood the signals from the stars, a war had erupted between galaxies. Daniel had been just a soldier, a human among humans, but circumstances had thrown him into the path of something extraordinary, a being of beauty and power beyond comprehension, the alien queen herself. She had been young then, a princess of a proud species, but exiled by her own people in the chaos of a galactic coup. Her people had sent her to the edge of the universe, expecting her to perish among hostile planets. Daniel had found her, wounded and afraid, and against all reason he had helped her. He had nursed her back to health, defended her from merciless hunters, and risked his life to protect someone he barely understood. Humanity, to him, was supposed to be the center of his universe. Yet, for a brief, shining period, another life had become his priority. He remembered the night he had watched her eyes, vast and alien, fill with tears as she whispered her gratitude. They had been enemies in every conceivable sense, different worlds, different species, different fates, but she had trusted him, and he had trusted her. For weeks they had shared stories of their lives, their cultures, their fears. Daniel had laughed at her strange customs, and she had studied his stubborn human habits with fascination. That bond, fragile and impossible, had become unbreakable. But reality had returned like a storm. Orders had come, battles had called, and Daniel had been forced to leave her behind on a planet far from human reach. The queen had promised she would survive, that she would rise again to reclaim her throne, and he had promised to remember her. That promise had been easy at first, a light-hearted recollection in quiet nights. Yet as years passed, memories of her had hardened into something that felt like longing, an ache that no human company could soothe. He had told himself he had done his duty. The universe had other plans. Life on Earth had gone on. Daniel had married, had children, and carried on with the ordinary rhythm of human existence. Yet in quiet moments, when the wind rustled leaves or a distant plane streaked across the sky, he felt the ghost of her presence. He remembered the way her skin shimmered under alien suns, the melodic tone of her voice, and the wisdom that belied her youth. The universe had moved on, or so he thought, but a part of him had never stopped waiting. Then the signal arrived. It was faint at first, like a whisper across the stars, but unmistakably hers. Daniel had stared at the holographic console, disbelief and hope warring in his chest. His hands trembled as he decoded the message, coordinates, a simple plea for help, a recognition that time had not erased their connection. She had found a way to reach him. She had remembered him as he had remembered her. The human heart, so accustomed to doubt, beat with a surge of courage he had not felt in decades. He packed what little he needed for the journey, leaving behind the comfort of the familiar. His children, confused and worried, watched him go, and he promised that this journey was not abandonment, but destiny. Every step toward that signal felt like stepping into a dream he had buried long ago. When he finally approached the coordinates, the planet shimmered like a jewel in the void. It was a place untouched by human hands, a world both terrifying and mesmerizing. The atmosphere was thick with colors he could not name, and the ground pulsed with life, alien and vibrant. And there, amidst the crystalline trees and glowing rivers, she waited. The queen, regal and wounded, yet radiant with a power that seemed to grow with every year apart, stepped forward. Her eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, time seemed to collapse. Daniel felt something swell inside him, a mixture of awe, fear, and a deep, undeniable joy. She had survived everything. She had returned. And he, the human who had once risked everything for her, was standing again before the being who had changed his life in ways words could never describe. The journey, he realized, was only just beginning. The air shimmered around them as Daniel stepped cautiously onto the alien soil. The ground pulsed faintly beneath his boots, alive in a way that made him uneasy yet strangely connected. The queen, standing with grace that commanded every corner of the clearing, studied him silently. Her gaze was sharp, aware, yet touched with the vulnerability of the years she had endured alone. Daniel could see the battles she had fought etched into her posture, the subtle tension of muscles trained for survival, the faint scars running like whispers across her skin. "You came," she said finally, her voice soft but carrying the authority of a ruler who had seen empires rise and fall. Daniel swallowed hard, the sound of his own heartbeat loud in the silence. "I never doubted it," he replied, though even he knew the truth of that statement was complicated. He had doubted, worried, wondered if the universe had forgotten them both, or if she had forgiven him for leaving. The Queen's lips curved in a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "You risked everything for me once," she said. "Do you understand what that means even now?" Daniel nodded slowly, his throat tight. "I understand that some promises are stronger than time, that some bonds survive galaxies and wars." For a moment they stood like that, two beings from different worlds, linked by memories that neither could fully articulate. But the serenity was fragile. A sudden tremor ran through the ground, and the trees shimmered as if warning them of danger. Daniel's instincts, honed from years of human conflicts, kicked in. "We're not alone," he said, reaching for the weapon at his side. The Queen moved beside him effortlessly, her hands glowing with a faint energy that seemed both protective and lethal. Daniel marveled at the ease with which she wielded power, a stark reminder that she was no longer the frightened princess he had once saved. She had grown into her role, shaped by exile and necessity, yet the human in him felt a pang of sadness for the solitude she had endured. Suddenly, a swarm of alien drones descended from the violet sky, their metallic bodies glinting like shards of night. They attacked without hesitation, drawn by the Queen's presence, a force determined to reclaim what had once been theirs, or destroy it entirely. Daniel fired instinctively, dodging the mechanical projectiles as best he could, but the sheer number of attackers forced him to rely on her. The Queen moved with grace that seemed impossible, her energy slicing through the swarm like a blade of light. Amid the chaos, Daniel realized something profound. He had fought wars, survived human battles, and faced impossible odds before, but none of it had prepared him for this. Here, on an alien world, fighting alongside a being who was part myth, part living star, he felt the depth of what humanity could achieve when it refused to bow to fear. The adrenaline surged, but beneath it, a steady determination anchored him. He was here for her, and nothing would sway him. Finally, as the last drone crashed into the ground in a shower of sparks, the Queen lowered her hands, energy fatting into the air. She turned to Daniel, her eyes scanning him for injury, her expression unreadable. "You've grown stronger," she said quietly, almost a whisper, and Daniel felt the weight of her words sink deep into his chest. "And yet you are still human." The acknowledgement hit him harder than any blow in battle. He was fragile, mortal, limited in ways she could never fully understand. But she saw his courage, his unwavering will to act, to protect. And somehow, in the quiet aftermath of danger, that recognition felt more powerful than any praise, more binding than any oath. "Why did you find me now?" Daniel asked, his voice catching. She stepped closer, and for a moment the alien world faded into insignificance. "Because the time has come," she said. "There are forces rising beyond this system, forces that will not stop at destroying me or you. I need you, Daniel, not just as a friend, as someone who understands what it means to fight for hope, to fight for life itself." Daniel swallowed, the enormity of her words settling over him. He had risked his life for her once, yes, but this was different. This was no longer a fleeting war, no longer a single choice in a single moment. The universe itself had changed, and now, standing before her, he realized that the human spirit, the stubborn, unyielding heart of his species, might be the key to something far greater than survival. He looked at her, the alien queen who had survived betrayal, exile, and loss, and felt a surge of resolve. "Then I am with you," he said, voice firm despite the fear gnawing inside him. "Whatever comes, whatever waits, I will not turn away." The Queen's eyes softened, just for a heartbeat, and Daniel saw in them a mixture of relief, admiration, and something deeper, something that explanation. The galaxy could throw storms at them, enemies at them, impossible odds. But for this moment they stood together. Human and alien, bonded by courage, by trust, and by a promise that neither time nor distance could erase. The night on the alien planet was alive with an eerie glow, strange flora casting shadows that seemed almost sentient. Daniel followed the Queen through the crystalline forest, his every step cautious. Though he had faced wars on Earth, nothing had prepared him for the alien terrain, where the ground seemed to hum beneath his boots and the air shimmered with unknown energy. Every sense screamed alert, yet he felt a strange calm alongside her presence. The queen walked with purpose, her eyes scanning the horizon constantly. "We are not safe yet," she said, her voice steady, almost melodic. Daniel nodded, gripping the strap of his weapon. He understood instinctively that danger wasn't just a possibility, it was inevitable. They were hunted by factions of her own people who had never forgiven her for escaping exile, and now more than ever, Daniel realized that humanity's courage might be the only advantage she had. Hours passed, or perhaps only minutes. Time felt fluid under the alien sky. Daniel marveled at how the queen moved, the strength she had cultivated through years of survival. She occasionally glanced at him, assessing, teaching, and guiding without words. "Human intuition is fascinating," she admitted at one point, stepping over a glowing root that pulsed like a heartbeat. "You see danger differently than we do, you act differently, and sometimes it works." Daniel swallowed. Praise from a being of her magnitude felt like sunlight piercing through an endless storm. Yet beneath the admiration, he could sense her worry. "What is coming?" he asked. She hesitated, her gaze shifting to the jagged mountains in the distance, black silhouettes against the violet sky. "A council is forming," she said finally. "They call themselves the Purists. They see me as a threat, a contaminant. They believe my survival defies the natural order, and they will stop at nothing to erase me." The weight of her words pressed on Daniel. Erasing her meant more than destroying a life. It meant annihilating centuries of knowledge, legacy, and hope. He felt a surge of anger, but also a quiet determination. Humans might be fragile, but the strength of will, the persistence, the stubborn refusal to yield, those were weapons in their own right. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the forest. Daniel instinctively dove to the side as a metallic spear shot past, embedding itself in the ground where he had just stood. The queen's eyes flared, and in an instant, energy arcs of pure light erupted from her hands, scattering their attackers like leaves in a storm. Daniel scrambled to his feet, firing his weapon at the advancing drones and humanoid soldiers. Though human technology seemed primitive compared to hers, his aim and instinct proved deadly. They fought through the night, Daniel relying on strategy and adaptability, the queen unleashing power that bent reality itself. Every moment, Daniel felt the depth of their bond, forged in survival, trust, and shared risk. He protected her flank, distracted enemies, and even improvised traps from the alien environment, skills that came naturally to a human who had learned to survive against impossible odds. When the final enemy fell, the forest was quiet, save for the hum of alien energy and their ragged breaths. Daniel turned to the queen, wiping sweat and grime from his face. "Are you unharmed?" he asked. She examined her armor briefly, then smiled faintly. "I am because you were here." Her voice held gratitude, but also something unspoken, a recognition of the human courage, that logic. Daniel felt a strange warmth at her words, a feeling he could not name. It was more than pride, it was connection, trust, and something that felt eternal. Yet danger was far from over. The Purists would regroup, and their numbers would only grow. The queen turned her gaze toward the mountains again. "We must reach the Citadel," she said. "It is the only place where we can plan, where allies can gather." Daniel nodded, determination hardening in his chest. The Citadel was more than a stronghold, it was hope itself. And though he was human, limited, and fragile, he understood that the universe sometimes relied on those very limitations. The ingenuity, creativity, and unpredictability of humans could tip scales even in battles they seemed too small to fight. As they moved toward the mountains, Daniel realized something profound. This was not just about survival or loyalty. This was about proving that humanity, small, fragile, and often underestimated, could stand shoulder to shoulder with the mightiest of civilizations. And in that realization, he felt an unstoppable fire within himself. Whatever awaited them at the Citadel, he would face it. For her, for the future, and for a promise that had survived across the stars. The path to the Citadel wound through jagged canyons and shimmering rivers of liquid crystal that reflected alien constellations above. Daniel's boots crunched over strange, iridescent stones, and every step reminded him of how fragile a human was in this vast, dangerous galaxy. Yet beside him, the queen moved with confidence and purpose, as if every step was already mapped in her mind. He could see the weight of her burdens, the invisible chains of responsibility she carried, and he felt a quiet surge of determination. He would not let her bear it alone. Suddenly the wind shifted, carrying with it a faint hum that made Daniel's teeth chatter. The queen stopped abruptly, her eyes narrowing. "Ambush," she hissed, a word that sounded both warning and command. Before he could react, the canyon walls erupted with motion, figures leaping down, clad in black and silver armor, their weapons humming with lethal energy. Daniel dove instinctively, rolling behind a jagged rock as blaster fire scorched the ground near him. The queen didn't hesitate. Energy flared from her palms, creating a barrier that shimmered like liquid light, deflecting the attacker's first wave. Daniel peeked over the edge of the rock and realized that the attackers were not mindless. They were coordinated, tactical, trained to counter her every move. Yet humans, he reminded himself, thrived in unpredictability. He scrambled to the side, noticing a narrow ledge that could allow them to flank the ambushers. "Follow me," he whispered. The queen tilted her head, a faint smile flickering across her face. For a moment, Daniel felt an odd mix of fear and pride. She trusted him, even now, despite knowing his human limitations. They moved in silence, shadows among shadows, Daniel's heart pounding with anticipation and the thrill of survival. They struck the ambushers from the side, Daniel improvising traps from jagged stones and alien vines, tripping soldiers into the canyon below. The queen's power was magnificent, but it was Daniel's ingenuity that turned the tide, forcing the attackers to retreat. As silence settled again, Daniel breathed hard, adrenaline still thrumming through his veins. The queen turned to him, eyes filled with awe and respect. "You are more than human," she said softly. "You are extraordinary." Daniel shook his head, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "I'm just stubborn," he admitted, "and I don't give up easily." But inside, he knew the truth. Humans survived not because they were the strongest or fastest, but because they refused to yield, even when hope seemed impossible. And in that refusal, they could stand against empires, against gods, against stars themselves. The journey continued, and the citadel loomed ahead like a shard of eternity carved into the mountainside. Its towers glowed faintly with energy, a beacon for allies and a warning to enemies. Yet even as they approached, Daniel felt unease. The purists were relentless and the queen's enemies were cunning. Every step forward could trigger a trap, every shadow could hide a strike. And yet he felt no fear that could paralyze him. At the gates of the citadel, they were met not with warmth but scrutiny. Alien warriors, allies of the queen, eyed Daniel warily. Humans were rare in their galaxy and few understood what they could bring. The queen stepped forward, her presence commanding attention. "He saved me once," she said, her voice carrying across the courtyard. "And now he stands with me again. Do not underestimate what he can do." Murmurs ran through the crowd. Daniel felt the weight of their judgment, yet also a strange exhilaration. He had always been underestimated on Earth, and here in the far reaches of the universe, it was no different. But he had learned something over the years. Human courage often revealed itself when the world expected weakness, and that courage could inspire even the mightiest of civilizations to act beyond reason. Inside the citadel, the queen led him to a chamber filled with maps, glowing holograms, and allies from countless worlds. Here, strategies would be made, alliances forged, and the coming war planned. Daniel glanced around, seeing beings of all shapes and forms, all united under her banner. And in that moment, he realized something profound. Though he was human, he belonged here. Not because of strength, not because of technology, but because of a quality unique to his species. The ability to fight, to endure, and to believe in hope when all else seemed lost. The queen watched him quietly, her expression unreadable. "We are far from safe," she said finally. "The purists will strike harder and the galaxy itself may tremble, but as long as you are with me, Daniel, we have a chance." He nodded, determination hardening in his chest. "Then we fight," he said simply, "and we do not stop." The citadel, vast and alien, hummed with life around them, yet Daniel knew the real battle had only just begun. The universe was vast, the enemies numerous, and the stakes unimaginable. But for the first time in years, he felt truly ready. Not because he was fearless, but because he had something that could never be measured in weapons or power: human resolve. The citadel hummed with tension, a nervous energy that vibrated through its alien walls. Daniel moved through the corridors beside the queen, feeling the weight of expectation pressing down on him. Every creature here, no matter how different from a human, watched him with a mixture of curiosity and doubt. He was, after all, only human, a fragile species in a galaxy where power was measured in unimaginable ways. Yet he felt no fear, only focus. He had faced impossible odds before, and this would be no different. The first warning came quietly, a whisper of movement in the shadows. Scouts of the Purists had infiltrated the outer perimeter, seeking to destabilize the citadel before launching a full assault. Daniel and the Queen paused in the control chamber, studying the holographic maps. She traced her fingers across the glowing display, her expression unreadable. "They are testing us," she said. "They want to see our weaknesses, but they will not understand humans." Daniel nodded, knowing exactly what she meant. Humans had a peculiar way of turning disadvantage into opportunity. Where others saw limits, they saw possibility, and he intended to prove it. He scanned the corridors and the defensive systems, quickly spotting areas the Purists might exploit. "We can use the terrain to our advantage," he suggested, "and create traps where they least expect them. If they think we are weak, we can make them regret it." The Queen studied him for a moment, a faint glimmer of admiration crossing her eyes. "I underestimated your mind," she admitted. "It is as dangerous as any weapon we possess." Daniel allowed himself a small smile. He had never been the strongest, never the fastest, but humans survived because they adapted. And adaptation, he realized, was sometimes more powerful than raw strength. The first wave of Purists struck at dusk. Shadows moved along the crystalline walls, and energy bolts illuminated the night like violent fireflies. Daniel leapt into action, setting traps that used the alien environment to disorient and capture the attackers. He directed the Queen to weak points and blind spots, anticipating movements that even the most seasoned alien warriors might miss. The Purists were relentless, but Daniel's ingenuity gave them hesitation, and hesitation was all the advantage he needed. As the battle raged, Daniel realized something he hadn't expected. The aliens, despite their advanced technology and skill, were unnerved by human unpredictability. He ducked behind a pillar, rolled, and triggered a series of crystal spikes that skewered a group of attackers before they even realized the danger. The Queen's power tore through others with blinding precision, but it was Daniel's human creativity that changed the flow of the fight. He was small, fragile, and mortal, and yet in that moment he became a force that even the Purists could not ignore. Finally, after what felt like hours, the citadel fell silent again. Daniel's chest heaved, sweat and grime streaking his face. He looked around at the Queen, expecting to see exhaustion or anger, but instead he saw something deeper, a mix of relief, pride, and something he could not name. "You were brilliant," she said softly. "The Purists underestimated what it means to be human, and now they will pay for it." Daniel shook his head, trying to dispel the adrenaline that still raced through him. "I didn't do it alone," he replied. "You fought beside me. We fought together. Humans may be clever, but we survive because we trust, because we act when hope seems lost." Her eyes softened, and for a moment the distance between species, worlds, and lifetimes vanished. The aftermath of the battle brought a brief respite, but Daniel knew it was temporary. The Purists would regroup, and the galaxy itself was restless. Yet in the quiet moments as he repaired his gear and tended to minor injuries, he realized something profound. Humans brought something no alien technology or power could replicate: heart, courage, and the stubborn refusal to give in. That was his gift, and it had saved more lives than he could count. The Queen approached him, her hands resting lightly on his shoulders. "I brought you back into this world," she said quietly. "Not just because I needed protection, but because I remembered the human who risked everything for me. And now I see that you are more than you ever knew. You are extraordinary." Daniel felt a surge of emotion he could not name, pride, fear, and a deep connection to someone who had once been beyond his reach. "I am human," he said simply, "and I fight because I cannot do otherwise, for you, for this citadel, for what is right." She nodded, her gaze steady and unwavering. "Then we have hope," she said, "and hope can conquer even the darkest stars." Daniel looked out over the alien horizon, where the stars glimmered like shards of glass. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers and wonders beyond imagining, but he was no longer just a human from Earth. He was a force to be reckoned with, standing beside the Queen, ready to face whatever came next. And in that certainty, he found a courage that even the Purists could never destroy. The citadel trembled as the Purists unleashed their largest assault yet. Waves of alien warships darkened the skies, and the sound of energy cannons shaking the foundations of the mountain fortress sent shivers through every being inside. Daniel's heart raced, but he moved with calm precision, scanning the battle holograms and coordinating defenses. Fear was there, a natural human instinct, but it was tempered by focus and determination. He had faced impossible odds before. This was just another test. The Queen stood at the central platform, energy radiating from her like a living sun. Her presence commanded the citadel, and yet Daniel could see the strain etched across her face. Centuries of responsibility, exile, and endless battles had left marks, but in that moment, she was both a ruler and a fighter, brilliant and terrifying in her resolve. Daniel felt the familiar pull of admiration and loyalty, the unspoken bond that had begun years ago and grown stronger with every challenge. "Daniel," she called, her voice cutting through the chaos. "The southern gates, they will be overwhelmed first. Can you hold them?" He glanced at the map, noting the swarm of purist forces closing in. "I can," he replied, though his chest tightened. "I'll turn their strength against them." She nodded, a flicker of trust and relief in her alien eyes, and he moved toward the gates, weaving through soldiers and alien tech that hummed with energy. At the gates, the first wave of attackers slammed into the defenses. Daniel ducked under blaster fire, grabbing pieces of alien machinery and jury-rigging traps that activated with unpredictable timing. Human intuition, he realized, was an asset that could confound even the most precise enemy. He created false paths, redirected energy flows, and set surprises that slowed the purists' advance. Every action, every improvisation bought the Citadel precious time. The battle pressed on, brutal and unrelenting. Daniel's arms ached, his mind raced, but he refused to stop. Humans thrived in adversity, he reminded himself. He thrived in adversity, and this was not just survival, it was defense of something greater. The Queen's energy flares lit the battlefield, carving paths through enemy ranks, while Daniel's strategies turned weakness into strength. For the first time, he realized the true synergy between human unpredictability and alien power. Together, they were unstoppable. As the night deepened, a massive purist commander broke through the defenses, a towering figure with advanced energy armor and weapons that could obliterate everything in its path. Daniel froze for a heartbeat, then acted. Using the terrain and traps he had set earlier, he lured the commander into a narrow corridor where the Queen's energy could channel its full force. The explosion of light and power echoed across the citadel, and when the smoke cleared, the commander lay defeated. The Queen turned to him, her expression unreadable at first. Then a rare smile broke across her face, warm and human in its simplicity. "You've done more than survive," she said softly. "You've shaped the battle itself. I am proud of you." Daniel felt a rush of emotions, relief, exhaustion, and something deeper. He had never sought praise, but to hear it from her after everything felt like validation of all the years, all the risks he had taken. Even as the purists retreated, Daniel knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and danger would return in forms they could not yet imagine. Yet in that moment, standing beside the Queen, he understood something profound. Humanity's strength was not in weapons, speed, or alien power. It was in courage, ingenuity, and the refusal to yield when hope seemed impossible. That was why he had survived, and why he could stand against empires. The Queen extended her hand, and Daniel took it without hesitation. The connection between them, forged years ago in a galaxy of chaos, felt stronger than ever. "You risked everything once for me," she whispered, "and now you risk it again. I do not know how to repay that." Daniel shook his head gently. "You don't repay it. You live, you fight, you survive. That's enough." They stood together atop the Citadel's highest tower, watching the first light of alien dawn break across the mountains. The purists had been repelled, the Citadel held, and for a fleeting moment there was peace. But Daniel knew the universe would not rest, and neither would they. Yet for the first time in years, he felt a certainty he had never known, that humans with their fragile bodies and stubborn hearts could face the impossible, and sometimes they could even inspire hope in gods and queens alike. As the wind from the mountains blew through their hair, Daniel realized that his journey, his struggles, and his courage had led to this moment. Not just as a human in a galaxy of power, but as someone who could stand beside the Queen, equal in determination, and unafraid to challenge fate itself. And in that realization, he felt something rare and unstoppable, the quiet, unshakable power of humanity. The Citadel was quiet now, but Daniel knew it was the calm before a storm that would shape galaxies. The purists were defeated for the moment, yet their shadows lingered in every corner of the universe. The queen stood beside him on the tower, her eyes scanning the alien horizon, where stars gleamed like silent witnesses to their struggle. Daniel felt the weight of every battle, every risk, and every choice he had made to arrive here. And yet, despite it all, he felt alive in a way he had never known. "You have done more than any human could have been expected to do," the queen said softly, her voice carrying a mixture of awe and gratitude. She turned to him, her eyes reflecting both the weight of centuries and the light of hope. Daniel shook his head, a tired smile tugging at his lips. "I am human," he replied simply. "We survive, we fight, and sometimes we change the impossible." Her lips curved into a faint smile, the first one that seemed entirely for him. "You have changed more than the impossible," she whispered. "You have changed me, and perhaps the universe itself." Daniel felt a warmth in his chest, the kind of feeling that no victory, no medal, no accolade could ever give. It was the recognition of connection, trust, and an unspoken bond that had endured beyond worlds and years. Suddenly, the sky shifted. Stars dimmed as a shadow passed over the citadel. The purists were regrouping, and their largest fleet yet was moving across the galaxy. The queen's expression hardened, regal and commanding, but Daniel saw the flicker of worry she tried to hide. He placed a hand on her arm, steadying her with the presence of something familiar, something human yet powerful in its own right. "We've faced them before," he said, "and we can face them again, together." The queen studied him, the alien and human worlds reflected in her gaze. For a long moment she seemed to measure not his strength, but the courage within him. Then she nodded, a rare and full expression of trust. "Very well," she said. "Then let the galaxy see what humanity is capable of." The next battle was unlike any they had fought. Daniel's human instincts, quick thinking, adaptability, and a refusal to succumb to fear, turned the tide in ways the alien forces could not anticipate. He led squads through treacherous terrain, improvised weapons from alien technology, and inspired even the most skeptical allies with sheer audacity. The queen unleashed her powers in brilliant displays of light and force, but it was Daniel's insight that often decided the outcome, his human intuition turning chaos into strategy. Hours later, when the last of the purist fleet was destroyed or scattered, Daniel and the queen stood atop a ridge overlooking the battlefield. Stars shimmered above like scattered diamonds, the galaxy quiet for the first time in years. Daniel's chest heaved, exhaustion heavy in his bones, but his spirit soared. He had done more than survive. He had changed the fate of a civilization. And through it all, he had done it alongside the being who had once been a helpless princess and now ruled as a queen. The queen turned to him, her eyes reflecting gratitude, pride, and something deeper, something that transcended words. "I will not forget what you have done," she said softly. "You risked everything for me once and again. No species, no ruler could repay that." Daniel shook his head gently, the weight of emotion heavy in his chest. "I do not need repayment," he said. "I only needed to be here to fight, to see that hope could survive." For a long moment they stood in silence, the galaxy stretching infinitely around them. Daniel felt the truth of something profound. Humanity, fragile as it seemed, had a power unlike any other. Courage, ingenuity, empathy, and the refusal to surrender could shake empires, defy logic, and inspire even the greatest of beings. That was why he had survived, and why he could stand beside her now, not as a follower, but as an equal in courage and spirit. Finally, the queen stepped closer. "You have reminded me that the heart matters more than power," she said, her voice quiet but resonant. "That life, connection, and courage can shape destinies." Daniel smiled, the exhaustion melting into a profound sense of peace. "Then let us shape them together," he said. "For every life, every star, every hope we can protect." The queen's hand found his, and in that simple gesture, years of distance, danger, and struggle melted away. Daniel realized that it did not matter if he was human or if the galaxy underestimated him. He had proven something eternal, that the human spirit, fragile yet indomitable, could shine brighter than any alien power, could face impossible odds, and could stand beside queens and kings as equals. And as they looked out over the galaxy, battered but alive, Daniel knew that this was not the end, but a beginning. Humanity had left its mark, not just on one world, but across the stars. And together, he and the queen would shape a future that no force could ever erase.